Have you ever wondered how a boy born in a log cabin, with no money, no formal education, could become the greatest president in American history? Could a single person, armed only with determination and belief, really change the destiny of a nation and redefine the meaning of freedom? And did you know that his death became the very beginning of a modern America? Today, you're about to embark on a journey through the life of Abraham Lincoln, not just a president, but a symbol of freedom, justice, and unshakable resilience. A man who failed almost all his life, but never lost his will to try again. Join us as we uncover his incredible story. And if it inspires you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss more powerful journeys like this one. Now, let's go back to the year 1809. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. His family was so poor, even going to school was a luxury. His mother, Nancy, died when Lincoln was just 9 years old. That loss became his first wound, a turning point. His father remarried a woman named Sarah, who would become his spiritual mother for the rest of his life. Lincoln was almost entirely self-taught. While other children went to school, he borrowed old books, copied pages by hand, and studied by firelight late into the night. "I had nothing but a hunger to learn and a few tattered books," Lincoln once said. From that scarcity rose a quiet, burning desire to change his fate and to do what was right. At 22, Lincoln left home and moved to the small town of New Salem. He did whatever jobs he could find, chopping wood, ferrying goods, running a store, working as a postmaster. Then one day, he decided to run for a seat in the Illinois state legislature at Speed, having no money, no connections, and no reputation. He lost. But Lincoln didn't give up. In 1834, he ran again, and this time, he won. He officially stepped into politics. At the same time, he began studying law on his own. By 1836, he had become a licensed lawyer. But what made Lincoln unique wasn't just his knowledge, it was his moral compass. He didn't just defend his clients, she often advised them not to go to court if it wasn't necessary. One local once said, "Lincoln didn't talk like a lawyer. He spoke like someone who knew right from wrong and always chose what was right." By the mid-19th century, America was bitterly divided. The North pushed for freedom, while the South clung to slavery. Lincoln realized something crucial. Slavery wasn't just a moral issue, it was a threat to the very unity of the nation. He famously declared, "A house divided against itself cannot stand. America cannot exist half slave and half free." In 1858, Lincoln ran for the U.S. Senate against Stephen Douglas, who supported each state's right to decide on slavery. In a series of 7 historic debates, Lincoln didn't just show powerful rhetoric, delivered a powerful truth. All men, regardless of skin color, are created equal. Though he lost that election, he won something greater, the heart of the American public. The nation began to know Abraham Lincoln as the man who dared to speak for what was right. In 1860, Lincoln was nominated by the newly formed Republican Party and elected as the 16th President of the United States. His victory outraged the southern states. One by one, they declared secession and formed the Confederate States of America, sparking a civil war that would last 4 brutal years. Faced with a nation tearing itself apart, Lincoln didn't choose revenge. He chose unity. He didn't seek power, he accepted a mission: to preserve the United States as one nation. On January 1863, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, a groundbreaking document that declared all slaves in rebellious states to be free. Although it didn't immediately free all slaves, it transformed the meaning of the war, from a fight for union to a fight for freedom. Lincoln wrote, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all, I would do that. If I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that." But in the end, he chose justice. Lincoln was no longer just a presidente, became the conscience of his time. War. It's the last thing any president wants to face, and Abraham Lincoln was no exception. When he took office in March 1861, the United States stood on the brink of disunion. 7 southern states had already seceded, forming their own government, the Confederate States of America, and had begun seizing federal arsenals and forts. Lincoln, determined to preserve the Union, was faced with an impossible question. How do you hold a country together without becoming a tyrant? Then, on April 12, 1861, the first cannon was fired at Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun. Lincoln wasn't a military man, but he proved to be a brilliant political commander. He spent countless nights in the White House war room, studying battlefield maps, reading field reports, tracking troop movements. He was mocked, doubted, condemned, but he never wavered. This war, he believed, wasn't just to preserve the nation, it was to redefine it. Over 4 long years, Lincoln would replace 5 generals before finding the one who matched his unyielding resolve, Ulysses S. Grant. In January 1863, Lincoln signed a document that would change the moral foundation of the conflict, the Emancipation Proclamation. Though it didn't immediately free all enslaved people, it reframed the war from a battle over states' rights to a crusade for human freedom. It became a war not just to save the Union, but to save its soul. But that vision came at a heavy price. Over 600 Americans died in the war, an almost unthinkable number. Lincoln often greeted grieving families at the White House. One day, he met with 10 mothers, each of whom had lost a son on the same battlefield. Then, on November 19, 1863, standing on the blood-soaked soil of Gettysburg, Lincoln delivered a speech just 272 words, lasting barely 2 minutes, that redefined American democracy. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Lincoln was not merely a wartime president. He was the conscience of a broken nation, guiding it through darkness with compassion, courage, and an unwavering moral compass. As the Civil War came to an end in April 1865, hope was finally returning. The Union had been saved. Slavery was on its way to abolition. Reconstruction had just begun. At last, Lincoln might have found the peace he had long deserved. But fate had other plans. On April 14, 1865, just 5 days after General Lee surrendered, Lincoln and his wife attended a play, Our American Cousin, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. In a moment that seemed safe and celebratory, a well-known actor and Confederate sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, crept into the presidential box and shot Lincoln in the back of the head. He was carried across the street to a small boarding house. For 9 agonizing hours, Lincoln lingered between life and death. Then, as dawn broke on April 15, 1865, he took his final breath at age 56. Now he belongs to the ages, someone whispered as Lincoln passed. News of his assassination stunned the nation. The grief was unimaginable. A funeral train carried his body across 7 states, stopping at countless cities where millions gathered to pay their respects. Children wept, soldiers saluted. Former slaves knelt by the tracks and placed their hands over their hearts, whispering, "Thank you." Lincoln became more than a fallen president. He became a symbol of liberty, dignity, and justice. In 1922, the Lincoln Memorial was unveiled in Washington, D.C., and decades later, Martin Luther King Jr. would stand on its steps and declare, "I have a dream." His legacy lives on not just in monuments or on currency, but in the very breath of American democracy. Abraham Lincoln wasn't just a president. He was the embodiment of integrity, compassion, and the unwavering belief in justice. From a poor, ragged child, he rose to lead a divided nation back to unity and laid the foundation for a modern America, free, united, and just. The lesson from Lincoln's life is this: you don't need noble birth or perfection to make a difference. All you need is the courage to stand for what's right, even when you stand alone. If this story inspired you, leave a comment below and tell us which historical figure you'd love to learn about next. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss our next powerful journey through history. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Because history isn't just the past, it's the fire that lights the path ahead.